In 1465, a parliament sitting at Trim passed a law telling Irish people to stop being Irish, not in general terms, in very specific ones. Every Irishman living inside the English-controlled area around Dublin was ordered to take an English surname, and the law told him where to get one. He could take the name of a town, Sutton, Chester, Trim, Skryne, Cork, Kinsale. He could take a color, white, black, brown. He could take a trade, smith or carpenter. He could take a household office, cook or butler. Take one, use it, pass it to your children. If you refused, the penalty was the forfeiture of your goods. That is a real statute, and it is the reason a lot of Irish families are walking around today under names that were handed to them by somebody else. But that is only one of the ways an Irish surname can be hiding something. Some of the names on this list hide the fact that your family were poets. Some hide that they were Norman knights. Some hide that they were German refugees. And three of them, including one of the most Irish names there is, hide the fact that your family were Vikings. Cursed is a strong word, but every name here is carrying something its owners were not meant to keep. This is Dust and Stories. Subscribe, because the story your surname tells is almost never the one you were told. Number 17, Smith. Smith is the most English surname imaginable, and in Ireland it is very often not English at all. It is MacGabhan, which means son of the smith, and it is heavily concentrated in County Cavan, where the MacGabhan family were a significant sept. When surnames were being anglicized, some families kept the sound and became McGowan. Others let the meaning be translated straight across and became Smith. Same family, same townlands, two names that look like they come from opposite ends of the Irish Sea. Number 16, Ward. In England, a ward was a watchman. In Ireland, ward is usually Mac-impaired, and it means son of the bard. That is not a job. It was a profession you inherited. The Mac-impaired family were hereditary poets, most famously to the O'Donnells of Donegal, and in Gaelic Ireland, the poet was not entertainment. He was a political weapon. He recorded your lineage, he legitimized your rule, and if you crossed him, he could compose a satire against you that was believed to be physically capable of raising blisters on your face. If your name is Ward, you may be descended from Ireland's professional dynasty of praise and insult. Number 15, Fox. The O'Sionnaigh family of the Midlands took their name from Sionach, the Irish for fox. When the name went into English, it was not sounded out, it was translated. The chief of the family was known simply as the Fox, and the title was still being used into the modern era. An animal name that sounds like a nickname somebody in England picked up. It is a 1,000-year-old Gaelic dynasty. Number 14, Waters, from O'Huish. Huishi is the Irish word for water, and it is the same word buried inside whiskey, which comes from Uish Beatha, the water of life. Translated into English, an ancient Gaelic family name turned into something that sounds like it belongs on a canal boat. Number 13, Thornton. Thornton sounds like an English village, because in England that is exactly what it is. In Ireland it is frequently O'Draigneine, from Dragean, the blackthorn. The blackthorn is not a neutral plant in Ireland. It is the fairy tree, the one you were warned never to cut, and the wood a shillelagh is made from. A family name for it got quietly repackaged as a Midlands parish. Number 12, King. Irish kings are usually not descended from anybody royal in the English sense. The name is commonly an anglicization of O'Kionga or of MacConroy in Connaught, where the first element was misheard or deliberately reshaped into the English word king. A sound became a claim. Nobody corrected it. Number 11, Rabbit. From O'Coinan, and Coinan is the Irish for rabbit. It is a Galway name, and the translation is completely literal. It is worth pausing on how strange this practice was. Nobody was checking. A clerk heard a Gaelic name, understood the root, and wrote down the English word for it. Whole families changed species. Number 10, Salmon, from O'Bredane. Bredan is the Irish for salmon, and the salmon is not a random fish in Irish tradition. The salmon of knowledge is one of the central stories in the whole mythology, the fish that held all the wisdom in the world. which Fionn MacComhaill got by accident when he burned his thumb cooking it for somebody else. Translated into English, the most loaded animal in Irish myth became a surname you would put on a fishmonger's van. Number 9. Switzer, Ruddle, Teskey, Sparling names that look like they have no business being Irish at all. They belong to the Palatines. In 1709, several thousand German Protestant refugees from the Rhineland arrived in Ireland after fleeing war and hard winters at home, and a few hundred families were settled on estates in County Limerick, around Rathkeale and Adare. They kept their names, kept their farming methods, and kept marrying each other for generations. Their descendants are Irish families going back 3 centuries, with surnames that still sound like they got off the boat yesterday, which, in a sense, is exactly what happened. Number 8. Burke. Burke is de Burgh. The family arrived with the Norman invasion in the 12th century, and William de Burgh was granted enormous holdings in Connaught. And then something happened that the English crown never really recovered from. The de Burghs went native. They adopted Irish law, Irish dress, the Irish language, and Irish fosterage customs. They split into Gaelic-style branches with Gaelic-style titles. They became, in the phrase that got attached to families like them, more Irish than the Irish themselves. If your name is Burke, your ancestors arrived as the invaders and changed sides so completely that the invasion had to be attempted again. It alarmed the crown enough to legislate against it. The Statutes of Kilkenny in 1366 were an attempt to stop exactly this. They banned the English colonists in Ireland from speaking Irish, from marrying into Irish families, from fostering their children with Irish households, from using Irish law, and from riding a horse in the Irish manner. You do not pass a law forbidding your own settlers to behave like the natives unless your settlers are already behaving like the natives. It did not work. Within a couple of centuries, the Burkes held Gaelic titles and were being written about in the annals in exactly the same terms as any Irish lord. Number 7. Power. Another Norman name, Le Poer, concentrated in Waterford, where it has been for 800 years, and the meaning is not what anyone expects. Le Poer means the poor. It began as a by-name, and whether it was literal, ironic, or a reference to a religious vow of poverty is genuinely uncertain. One of the most established families in the southeast of Ireland is called the Poor. Number 6. Sweeney. From MacSweeney, and the MacSweeney family were not originally Irish at all. They came from Argyll in western Scotland, and they came as Gallowglass. Gallowglass were elite mercenary infantry of mixed Norse and Gaelic descent who were brought over from the Hebrides to fight for Irish lords from the 13th century onwards. They were heavily armored. They fought with a two-handed axe, and they were paid in land, which is how a Scottish mercenary family ended up as one of the great names of Donegal. If you were a Sweeney, your ancestors were imported to do the fighting and stayed for the wages. And they were not alone. The same trade brought the MacDonalds, the McSheehys, the McCabe's, and the McDowells across from Scotland on the same terms. A whole layer of Irish surnames belongs to professional soldiers who were hired, granted land, and absorbed. When the English wrote about the difficulty of subduing Ulster, the Gallowglass were a large part of what they were complaining about. Number 5. Cotter, a Cork name from Mac Coitir. And Coitir is not Irish. It is the Norse personal name Ottar, run through Gaelic and given a Mac in front of it. That is what the assimilation actually looked like. A Scandinavian family in Cork settled long enough that they took a Gaelic patronymic and built it on a Viking grandfather's name. The Mac makes it look native. The rest of it is not. Number 4. Lynch. This one is 2 completely different families wearing the same name. There is O'Loingside from Loingseek, meaning a mariner or a seafarer, purely Gaelic, found across Munster and Ulster. And there is de Lench, a Norman family who became one of the tribes of Galway, the 14 merchant dynasties who ran that city for centuries. They were so dominant that Galway was sometimes called Lynch's Town. 2 unrelated bloodlines, one from a Gaelic word for sailor and one from Norman French, collapsed into a single English spelling. There is no way to tell from the name alone which one you are. And there is a story attached to the Galway lynches which we should deal with honestly, because it is repeated constantly. It is said that a mayor of Galway named James Lynch Fitzstephen hanged his own son for murder when nobody else would do it, and that this is where the word lynching comes from. The word does not come from Galway. Lynching is an American term from the 18th century, and the Galway hanging story cannot be traced back further than the late 1700s either. It is a good story, and it is not an etymology. Number 3, Higgins o Huygen. And Huygen comes from the Old Norse Vikingshar. Higgins means descendant of the Viking. It is a Connaught name associated with Sligo, and it is about as Irish-sounding as a name can get. It was carried by a hereditary poetic family. It has been carried by a president of Ireland, and it is, at root, a Gaelic family recording that somewhere at the head of the line was a raider from the north. Number 2, MacLauchlan from McLaughlin. And Lachlan is the Irish name for Scandinavia, not a person, a country. MacLauchlan means son of the Norseman, or son of the man from Lachlan. There are 2 distinct families using it, one a branch of the northern Uí Néill and one from Donegal. And the name records exactly what the Irish annalists thought of the men who came off those ships. They did not call them Danes or Norwegians. They called them the people from Lachlan, and some families took that as their permanent identity. Number 1, Doyle. One of the most common surnames in Ireland, strongly associated with Wexford and the southeast, about as unambiguously Irish as a name gets. It is O Dubgail. Dub means black or dark. Gaul means foreigner. Doyle means descendant of the dark foreigner. And Dubgail was not a vague insult, it was a technical term. The Irish annalists divided the Norse into 2 groups. The Fingail, the fair foreigners, generally taken to mean the Norwegians, and the Dubgail, the dark foreigners, generally taken to mean the Danes. Those words were used to describe rival groups fighting each other for control of Dublin in the 9th century. So the name is not a poetic flourish. It is a piece of contemporary war reporting that turned into a family. And there is a neat symmetry to where the Doyles ended up. The heartland of the name is Wexford and the southeast, which is precisely the stretch of coast the Norse used hardest. Wexford itself is a Norse name from Weissafjordur, so are Waterford from Vedrafjordur, and Wicklow and Leixlip, which means salmon leap. The map of Doyle country and the map of Norse Ireland are close to the same map. If your name is Doyle, then somewhere back at the very start of the line, there was a Danish settler that Irish scribes described as a dark foreigner, and his descendants kept the label, carried it through 1,000 years, and turned it into one of the most Irish names on the island. 17 names. A smith who was a Mac Gubhan, a watchman who was a hereditary poet, a fox, a rabbit, and a salmon that were all Gaelic dynasties before a clerk translated them, German refugees in Limerick, Norman knights who went native, Scottish mercenaries paid in Donegal land, and 3 separate names, all of them worn as badges of Irishness, that mean Viking. That is what a surname actually is, not a fact about your family. A record of what somebody else decided to write down about them in whichever language had the power that day. If your name came up, subscribe to Dust and Stories. We go looking for the history hiding inside ordinary things and the places that got quietly left off the map, like the video. Drop a comment with your surname and the county your family came from, and we will tell you what we can find. And thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.